I sought genetic testing and learned that I carry a genetic mutation that will cause a fatal disease. And I want to talk about why I decided to get the genetic testing and how it has panned out for me in the end against the expectations that I had going into it. In 2022, I learned that my dad's early onset Alzheimer's disease was caused by a rare genetic mutation, and that I had a 50% chance of having inherited it. If I did carry the genetic mutation, I would be likely to develop symptoms around the same age that my dad did, his late 50s. I chose to get tested, but knowing the results didn't exactly give me the clarity I expected. And today I'm going to talk about why I chose to get tested and why the journey thereafter has been a little different than I imagined. First of all, let's talk about finding out that you might carry a genetic mutation like this one. What I've learned is that people, when they find this out, usually fall into one of three camps. They either immediately want to know whether they carry it. They may want to just poke their head in the sand and never talk about Alzheimer's again. And there are some people that aren't sure and they face a difficult decision about whether they should or shouldn't get genetic testing. I was not uncertain at all. I immediately was an I need to know person, and I pursued genetic testing right out of the gate because I felt incredibly anxious about not knowing. I was fixated on it and I was going to be thinking about it constantly until I had an answer. So I needed to know. And on top of that, I wanted to do anything that I could to prevent or delay the disease for myself. And even if I couldn't prevent or delay the disease for myself, I wanted to contribute to the research that would help the next generation. Because I have two sons who each have a 50% chance of having inherited the same mutation. I thought that knowing I would develop Alzheimer's at a certain age would make planning more straightforward. But I found that it's not as clear cut as I expected. Here's why. One complication is around the anticipated age of onset. People who carry these rare genetic mutations are expected to develop symptoms around the same time that others in their family developed symptoms. So for me, my dad was around 58 years old, but my dad is the only other carrier in our family that we're absolutely certain of. So it's just that one data point. We assume that the mutation came through my dad's mom's side of the family, but she died at 54. So she never showed any symptoms, and we don't have an age of onset for her. Her mother had Alzheimer's disease, but she lived to age 82. So when did she develop symptoms? I'm not sure. The length of the symptomatic period for Alzheimer's can range widely. It could be 2 years up to 20 years, depending on how quickly a person progresses. But the standard course is 10 to 11 years. And if that was true for her, that would put her onset around age 71 or 72, which is more than a decade after my dad's onset. I don't know when her symptoms started, and I don't know exactly what my age of onset would be. The researchers for the clinical trial I'm in at Diane certainly have a calculation around an age of onset in my file, but I'm not sure what it is. And I don't think that they would tell a participant that information. So are you starting to see why it isn't very simple? A second reason for me is my specific mutation is a bit of a plot twist. My family carries a PSEN1 mutation known as A79 for short. And there's some published research on this. ALZ forum, ALZ forum, is a particularly good reference for information on individual genetic mutations. And the research shows that this specific mutation, the one my family carries, is linked not only to early onset Alzheimer's, but also late onset Alzheimer's in some families. It's said to have what's called incomplete penetrance. Most familial Alzheimer's disease mutations are almost guaranteed to cause Alzheimer's in 100% of carriers, but our genetic mutation does not guarantee a person will develop Alzheimer's within their lifetime. Reported ages of symptom onset for this mutation range from as early as 44 all the way up to 77, with some carriers never developing symptoms at all. One explanation for this is life expectancy, even in 2025, for men around the world is around 74 to 76 years old. And if you had an age of onset, if you were going to become symptomatic at 77, but you passed away at 74, we would have never seen your symptom onset, right? So the incomplete penetrance could map back to the fact that many people pass away before they reach symptom onset. One of the genetic counselors I've spoken with about this particular mutation explained it like this. They said that everyone who carries the A79V mutation would probably develop Alzheimer's disease if they live long enough, right? The specific genetic mutation is a variable for each family who carries FAD genetics. And there are over 200 different genetic mutations associated with FAD. Another reason that planning is complicated for me is because I learned about this at age 39, and I have a chance to do a lot of the things that my dad didn't know to do. Diet, exercise, sleep, stress management, socialization, etc. There are a lot of things that we can do to potentially improve brain health and delay disease. Now, what impact do these lifestyle factors have? We're not quite sure. There's not a lot of research that compares the impacts of lifestyle factors on FAD, right? But science is moving fast. And at 41, I'm already in a prevention drug trial. Does this anti-amyloid drug end up delaying my disease? Does funding end up holding up, or does it end up going away because funding in the United States is at risk for Alzheimer's research? There are a lot of variables here. And all of this is to say that even with the knowledge that I carry the genetic mutation, planning isn't as straightforward as I thought it would be. It's really a moving target. So the question is then, was it really worthwhile to learn my genetic status? For me, it was worth it. My anxiety was satisfied by knowing, and I no longer struggle with uncertainty. I just live with the knowledge. It's a heavy thing to know, but the way I think of it is this genetic reality has been true since I was a baby in my mom's belly. And it just so happens that I now know the truth about my genetic mutation. And I've been able to make changes related to prevention and delay of disease. You know, I'm a part of a trial. I have a multi-pronged approach to lifestyle, less beef, more exercise, stuff like that. Although I will be the first to admit that I'm not perfectly rigid about it. And I don't know the extent to which it will actually make a difference. But I took all of this to my financial advisor thinking, okay, we can plan, you know, we know what's expected. And for me, one of the craziest parts of all of it is that given the situation, their advice was that I needed to plan for two completely different futures. One where I might need care at, you know, age 63 or 64, and one where I live to 95 because the trial worked and I need money for this long retirement and care in my very old age. So we're literally budgeting for both tragedy and triumph at the same time. Genetic testing gave me knowledge. It didn't give me certainty. And although it's way less decisive than I thought it would be, I would make the same choice again. So if you're facing a similar decision, if you've got questions about anything that I've shared, please do drop me a comment. The community here on YouTube has become a part of my support system, and I read every single comment. So let me know what questions this raises for you, and if you're struggling with anything similar. Thanks for listening.